Hello grade 9s, welcome to today's Maths Lit video lesson. I hope you guys are well. Today we're going to be going over the last segment of the data cycle, which is to analyze the data. So this you'll find on page 288, and I'm just going to go through some of the worked examples, explain how they got the results in more detail, and basically what we're doing here is analyzing our pie charts or our tables and hopefully drawing some meaningful conclusions. So the first example we're going to go through is on page 288, and this is a comparison of two tables, week 1 and week 2, and it shows the number of learners per day buying food at the tuck shop in 2 consecutive weeks. It asks us to analyze the data between the 2 weeks. So in analyzing data, we'll be focusing on measures of central tendency. That's our mean, median, and mode. And we're also going to look at measures of dispersion, how spread out the data is. So remember, measures of central tendency give us an overall description of what the data is doing. So I'm going to analyze the data for week 1. Week 2 you guys can do on your own. So this table lists the days of the school week, Monday to Friday, and the number of learners who purchased from the tuck shop on each of these days. So on Monday, 10 learners purchased from the tuck shop. On Friday, 40 learners purchased from the tuck shop. So the first thing we need is the total number of learners. So we add all these numbers together. 10 plus 15 is 25, plus 25 is 50, plus 30 is 80, plus 40 is 120. So next we'll look at the most common value, the mode, which is one of our measures of central tendency, and the most popular day is Friday, where 40 learners purchased. All other days have fewer numbers of learners purchasing. So the mode is Friday with 40 learners. Next, we'll go over the median, another measure of central tendency, and our median is the middle value. So these values go up in ascending order, 10, 15, 25, 30, 40, and our middle value is the 25. Lastly, we'll find the mean, which is like the average. And the mean would be the total number of purchases divided by days of the week. And that gives us, so we add up all these numbers, that would be the total 120 number of purchases over the number of days, which gives us 24. So on average, on each day, 24 learners purchased from the tuck shop. So remember, these 3 M's, mode, median, and mean, are our measures of central tendency. They describe in a summary overall what the data is doing. So next we're going to talk about measures of dispersion, how spread out the data is. And to do that, we would find the range, which is by definition the maximum value minus the minimum value. So our maximum value is 40, subtract our minimum value, which is 10, and that gives us a range of 30 learners. So just to describe what's happening in week 2, we have the same list as in week 1, days of the week, and the number of learners that purchase from the tuck shop for each day. The only noticeable difference is that on Friday we have 0 learners purchasing, and it tells us here that Friday for week 2 is a public holiday. So there are two analyses for this table. One of them includes Friday, includes the 0, and the other is excluding Friday. So with the exclusion, it's just dealing with 4 days of the week. So in those summary statistics, in those measures of central tendency, when we're calculating the mean, for example, we would be dividing the 120 by 4. So just double check these values in the textbook using the same method as for week 1. So next up, we're going to look at the example on page 289. This is just describing how the scales on the vertical and horizontal axes can sometimes be misleading. So we have two graphs for stock A and stock B respectively. And for stock A, our vertical scale goes from 5 to 9.5. And for stock B, our scale goes from 0 to 15. So pictorially, it looks like stock A is increasing faster. So at this particular point on this day, Thursday, it might be tempting to purchase stock A. But if we look at the overall values, we can see that stock B increased from 5 to 15, which is a jump of 10, whereas stock A only increased from 5 to 9.5, which is a jump of 4.5. So what this is telling us is that stock B increases faster. So mathematically, it would be better to purchase that stock. Lastly, I'm going to do one of the exercises with you guys. This is exercise 24.2 on page 289, and I'm going to go through question 1. So the question reads that there's a table containing maths exam results of some learners for the June and December exam. 1A is asking us to use a double bar graph to represent the data. So to start off, we just want to specify our axes. The vertical axis is our marks, and it's in the percentage, goes from 0 to 100. And for the horizontal axis, we have each of the learners, 1 to 10. So our first learner got 85% for the June exam and 46% for the December exam. So 85, this is going up in 20s, so this is 80. So 85 is just a little bit above. And then for December, he got 46. So it's 20, 40, and 46 is a little bit above there. So we're going to use a key to specify what each of the bars mean. We can shade the first bar and let our key for the shaded be June, and for the unshaded be December. So I'm just going to fill in the next value, and then I'm going to pause the video and fill in the rest. So learner number 2 got 25 for his June exam. So it goes up 20, so it's just a little bit above. And 65 for his December. So 20, 40, 60, 65 is a little bit above. And then don't forget to shade. Okay, so I'm just going to fill in the rest. So this is what our completed double bar graph should roughly look like. So earlier I used a guesstimate for the values which were not exactly multiples of 20. For example, 85. I said we'll just go up to 80 and go a little bit above. But I'm only doing that because I'm using a whiteboard. You guys would have to measure accurately with a ruler. So for this vertical axis going from 0 to 100, you would measure 100 millimeters, which is 10 centimeters. And when you get the value 85, you would measure 85 millimeters or 8.5 centimeters. And lastly, please don't forget the axis labels. So the horizontal was learners and the vertical was marks. And lastly, these types of representations always need a heading. So we would say this would be maths results, for example. And these are easy marks. Each of these labels and headings counts for a mark. So on to question 1b. This is asking us to find the measures of central tendency, which are our mean, median, and mode for each of the semesters for June and December. So starting off with June, we're going to look at the mode, which is the most common value. So we've got 2 marks of 25 and 2 marks of 85. So each of these would be our mode. Next up, we have the median, which is our middle value. So we would first have to order this data from lowest to highest and then observe it to see our middle value. So our lowest is in the 20s, 20 exactly. Then we've got 2 25s. Let's look for 30. Yes, there's 1. 40 is next. 50 is nothing. 60 is nothing. 70, 80, then the 2 85s, and our highest mark, which is 90. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of our learners ordered from highest to lowest. Now, because there are 10 values, our median is right in the middle, so it's actually between our 5th and 6th value. So that would mean it's the average between 40 and 70. So we find the average by adding these 2 numbers together and dividing by 2. So 40 plus 70 is 110, divided by 2 is 55. So our median is 55. And lastly, we have our mean, which is the average mark. So to find the average, we add up all the marks and divide it by the number of learners. So when we add up all the marks, we get 550. You can check this on your own. And we divide it by the number of learners, so divide it by 10, and that gives us an average mark of 55. Question 1b is also asking us to find measures of dispersion, and that's just going to be our range. If you recall, range is highest value minus lowest value, so it's going to be 90 minus 20, which gives us 70. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but for the December exams. So before we start with finding the measures of central tendency for the December exams, I just want to order this data from highest to lowest. So I'm just going to use a simple stem and leaf plot, and you can see that all these results are in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So the first value is 46, then we get 65, 60, 55, 54, another 60, 2 50s, 2 55s, and I think that's it. Let's check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so let's put this in numerical order. We've got 46, 50, 50, 54, and 3 55s. to 60s, and our highest is 65. So ordering the data in this way helps us to find the mode and median. Our mode is the most common value, and we can easily see from our ordered list that there are 355s, our most common value. Next we have the median, which is the middle value, and once again for the 10 observations, our middle value is going to be between the 5th and the 6th. So we would get the average then of these two values. The average of 55 and 55 is going to be 55. Next up we have the mean, and we have to add up the marks and divide by the total number of learners. So we get the total marks coming to 550 divided by the number of learners, which is 10, gives us a class average of 55. Lastly, we need the measure of dispersion, which is the range, and we take the highest value minus the lowest value, which is 65 minus 46, which gives us 19. So moving on, question 1c asks us, what do we notice? So we compare the statistics we got for June and December, and we can see that the medians are the same at 55, the means are the same at 55, however our ranges differ. June has a much higher range than December. Question 1d asks us which of these measures is not applicable, and the answer would be the mode. And if you think about it, the mode is our most common value, but our values can take on anything between 0 and 100. So for June, just by luck, we had 2 people with 25 and 2 people with 85, but neither of these marks is really representative of what the overall class mark was. Rather, we look to the mean or the median. Question 1e asks us, in which semester did the learners perform better overall in the maths exam? So we scratched out mode as one of our indicators, and we'll look to the medians and the means. So unfortunately, our medians and means are identical. They're both at 55. So how are we meant to differentiate between the two? The answer lies in our range. So we can see that the range for December is smaller than the range for June, and this is the reason why we would say overall in December the learners performed better. So just to understand this pictorially, if this is our measure of central tendency at 55 and we have a relatively small range of 19, that means that most of the marks are centered around the pass mark of 55. However, if we look at what's happening in June, and this is our measure of central tendency at 55, our range being 70 means it's very wide. So some learners did very badly and got way under 50, and some learners did very well, got in the 90s, but we're interested in the pass mark. So if we look at these two, we'll see that unfortunately for June, a lot of learners failed. So that would be the reason why we would choose December as the learners performing better overall. So just be careful of this, because if you just look at this table like briefly, you'll see that the June exam has a lot of 80s and 90s. So that might be a little bit misleading. And that's why we need these measures of central tendency to give a statistically sound answer. So that concludes today's video lesson. We're nearly done with the section on data handling, and I'm not going to give out any homework on this. Just make sure you can follow the worked examples in the textbook and the examples I've done here in the video lessons. So thanks guys, thanks for watching, and next up we'll be finishing off this section with reporting the analysis.